Hi guys, welcome back to another sewing tutorial. So this is the outfit we're making today. If something you're interested in, please keep watching. Alright guys, so as per usual, I have traced out my front block and my back block. I always advise you have yours. I'll put a link to the video of how to make yours in the description box. So I'm just indicating that this is my front and that's my back. So I'm going to keep the back aside and we're going to get into the front. So before we start, you're going to need two measurements: the length of the dress, that's the full length, and the shoulder to the underbust measurement. So guys, when you want to measure your shoulder to your underbust measurement, you see this part where I'm putting my tape. Okay, just watch. You see, I try to slow it down so you can see what I'm talking about. Do you see where my tape is starting from? So that point on your neck, do you see where my tape is starting from? Yes, exactly. When you want to measure your shoulder to your underbust measurement, that's where you place your tape on. That part where your neck and your shoulder meets, that's where you place your tape on. And then you stretch it out to your darts and mark your underbust measurement on both legs of the darts. So when you're done doing that, you're going to check that measurement from that point to your waistline. Check that measurement and then you recreate it on the sides so that you can make a straight line across. So that gives you your underbust point. So you know this is where your underbust line is. So next thing, from the neck point, the neckline, I measured 7.5 inch. That's what I used, 7.5 inch. So I'm just marking that there. Then on the side under that, my underbust line, I'm going to mark 0.5 inch. So on top of my underbust line in my center front, I'm going to mark 1 inch. That's what I'm marking there. I'm going to connect that 1 inch point, making sure I touch the first leg of the darts and then onto that 0.5 inch under the underbust line. Please, I'm saying a lot of words, so just look at what I did. Do you see what I'm doing? Making sure it touches the first leg of the dart. You see, it needs to just glide onto that 0.5 inch under there. Yes, exactly like that. So we don't need that line anymore. So that's why I'm cancelling that. This is our new line. That's the one we're going to be using. Then next on the shoulder line, I'm going to be measuring 0.5 inch. 0.5 inch, guys. Then I'm going to connect that 0.5 inch line to that 7.5 inch we marked before. So I'm going to be using a curved ruler, not a straight ruler, because in the original style, the neck is sort of a rounded V, not just a straight V. So that's what I've done. So please just do yours like that. Ignore my wobbly lines. You're supposed to be actually really accurate and straight. So I'm going to cut off from that my curved line. Do you see what I'm doing? That line, yes, I'm going to just cut from that point. I'm going to keep that other part aside. We're going to need it for later, so I'll keep it aside and I'll continue on my top part so I can complete the top part of my dress. So now I need to close my side darts and move it over to the under bust. So I'm just removing all the excess paper so that I can make a snip at the bust dart. You should be used to this part by now if you follow my videos. So first thing I'm going to do is bring my armhole down by 1 inch. And then I'm going to connect all that with a curve into the original armhole with a curved ruler. So that's just all I'm doing. And then I'm just going to cancel out that line because we won't be needing that anymore because that's our new armhole. So next I'm going to connect the pointy sides of my two darts together with a straight line. Then I'm going to make a cut on one of the dart leg all the way to the tip of my side dart. I'm going to also cut on another leg of the side darts. So you can see I try to cut on the opposites, not the lines directly close to each other. So now make sure your paper is dangling like this. If it's not, please snip. Make sure you get as close to not all the way, just as close. So now I'm just going to cover my darts. So I'm just using a seal tape to hold that down. So we've moved the dart from the side to the underbust. So now, you should be used to this part, because I don't want the neck to have a gaping. I'm going to be marking a straight line there, making sure it's touching the darts on the side. I'm going to take half an inch beside that line, a quarter of an inch, sorry, not half. Then I'm going to connect that to that line, just to create like a dot, sort of like a small triangle. I'm going to cut on one leg of that line. Then I'm going to flip it over just to cover it. So this is going to take away any gaping or like looseness on the neckline. And I'm transferring that cut to the underbust again. So it makes the underbust that wider. So I'm just securing with a tape rather. And then I'm going to use my curve ruler just to complete that line, because you can see the line is broken now. It's not together anymore. So you just complete that line with your curved ruler. And that's pretty much it. So I'm just going to cut out my new neckline because we don't need all that part anymore. So I'm just going to cut around my new armhole. So next I'm going to be bringing my paper so I can draw out my allowance before I make cuts on this bodice. Remember, this dress has draping on the neckline, so I'm trying to get my facing for my dress now that it's still whole before I make cuts on it. So this is what you do. Just place your paper on another paper, trace out your neckline, trace it all the way around. You see what I'm doing? Please, this is more visual than me trying to explain it. So just trace all around the way I'm doing, not the entire bodice, just trace up to a reasonable amount. So when you're done tracing, I'm just trying to use my marker to show you everything that I've just traced. All I did was place the original block that I just finished working on, and I just traced around it with a pencil onto a fresh paper, so I can create a facing for my neck before I make cuts on it. So after doing this, I'm going to mark my allowance all around, because this is just the original. There's no allowance on it. So now on the curved part of the neckline, you see I'm taking half an inch as my allowance all around. Please, you don't need more than half. You can even make it less, maybe up to a quarter, but I prefer half so I have enough room to work with. Up to that curved part. Now, at that part where my neckline ended, I'm going to mark 1 inch. Please look at what I'm doing. I'm going to mark, that's why I'm extending that line. From where my neckline ended, I'm going to be making 1 inch. This is because there's going to be a zipper at that part, so it needs enough room to stay on. So that's why I'm making 1 inch. So I took ½ inch on my curve line, on my neckline, and then where the neckline ended, I took 1 inch. So do you see? So that's 1 inch. So next, I'm just using my marker to show you the 1 inch that I made on the neckline. So you can use your curve ruler if you don't want to go through the hassle of joining it one by one. Just use your curve ruler to making sure it's touching all the ½ inch mark you made. So please watch the way I did the end. I just blended that ½ inch into the 1 inch. Do you see? Just blend it smoothly with your free hand into the 1 inch. So what this means is the neckline has ½ inch. Then where the zipper is going to be at the front has 1 inch. So just connect that to the end of the piece with just a straight line. So at the shoulder, I'm going to be taking ½ an inch allowance at my shoulder. Just marking ½ an inch. I'm going to rule all that together. So now, to determine how wide my facing is going to be, I decided to go with just 1 inch. Because remember, this dress has draping at the neck and you don't want anything to hinder the design. So I just took 1 inch on the inside. Please do yours like this. 1 inch for the inner allowance. That's what I'm doing. 1 inch all the way to the end. This is how I cut my facings. So I'm just going to connect it, or connect all those lines together. Just like that. And with that, the facing is done. So I'm just going to cut all around. So I'm just cutting it. Please look at the lines I'm cutting. So I'm just going to cut all around on my lines. Guys, please just watch the part that I cut. That's what you cut. This thing I'm showing you is more visual than actually listening to me. So just look at what I did and just do it like that. So I'm just indicating that this is my facing for my front. I'm going to cut 2 pieces. And so that's why I wrote cut 2 pieces. So I'm just showing you. Do you see? That's the facing for my neck. So when I'm done, I'm just going to use this to turn my neck inside to make it look neat and fine. So I'm going to keep that aside. Just checking this measurement. Guys, please use your tape to measure the way I'm measuring and write that down. Because when you pull your gathers, you need to be able to make sure your gathers is that exact length. Do you see what I just did there, guys? Please, you can rewind that back and watch it. Now you're going to measure again the zipper part, the measurement of that, so that when you're trying to pull your gathers for that part, you know how long that is. So I just wrote that down. So when you find yours, measure yours, just write yours down on the face. I know I'm saying a lot of things at once, but if you look as I'm explaining them, you understand better. So the next thing I want to do is move my underbust dart to the center. So I just made a straight line on the side dart. I made a cut there, and I'm going to just close my underbust dart. Guys, you see, I did not just close it to paper. I closed it over that line that is showing. Do you see that line that is showing? So that's why I moved the underbust dart to the neckline. So next thing I'm going to do is make lines. Guys, this is where I'm making lines. You can make them 1 inch apart, 2 inches apart, but I think 1 inch is fine, so you can have enough pleats on yours. If you don't want to go to the stress of spread, maybe you do not want as much, you can make yours up to 1.5 inch. Mine were exactly 1 inch wide. So I'm just making, you see where that front dart is? I avoided that, just made another line after that. I made sure I avoided that dart because there's already a space there, so we do not need that. So after cutting, I'm going to bring a blank paper. I'm going to be opening up my papers, my lines, 1/2 inch wide, just 1/2 inch. So because I have smaller lines, I'm going to make it 1/2 inch. If you have bigger lines, maybe up to 2 inches wide, you can make your spacing in between up to 1 inch. So, but mine are a lot of papers, so that's why I'm making mine 1/2 inch. So this is what I'm doing. I spread up to 1/2 inch and I hold that down with a tape. Spread up to 1/2 inch, hold that down with a tape. So it's just a continuous process until I've opened up all the lines that I just cut, and they are each having 1/2 inch space in between. Okay, so now I'm done doing that. I'm just going to connect each and every one of those points with a curve. Can you see what I'm doing? I start with my free hand, and then I just brought up my curved ruler and just completed it. So if you're not able to use your hand freely, you can use a curved ruler to complete those lines. So I'm just curving it. So now I'm done with the curve. Remember where our neckline ended? Make sure that line, mark it out on your paper. Mark it into the paper so that you can remember to make a notch there. That's where your neckline ends and where your zipper will start. Please, guys, don't forget to make that line. So that's that bold line I was making there. So now I'm just trimming all around, removing the excess. Make sure that you're trimming exactly where the paper stops. Please don't add any extra allowance. You can put your allowance on your fabric. So I'm just cutting everything out. So now that I'm done with the front, I'm going to go into the back. So I brought my front pattern. You remember the part I told you we should keep aside? So now I'm going to check the side measurement from that point up to my waistline. I'm going to check that measurement. Now I'm going to take that measurement to my back. That exact measurement, I'm going to take it to my back and I'm going to just mark it, starting from my waistline to the top. So I'm going to rule that line across. Then I'm going to cut on that line to separate the top from the bottom, just like we did to the front. So I'm just cutting that. And I'm going to keep that aside. So just like we did in the front, I'm going to bring my armhole down by 1 inch, just like I did in the front. And I'm going to use my ruler just to blend it into the armhole. And then I'm cancelling that old line because we don't need it anymore. So next I'm going to mark 1/2 inch in on my shoulder line. Remember we took our front neck in by 1/2 inch. So I'm going to do the same thing to the back. And then I'm going to use a curved ruler just to blend that into the back. 1/2 inch below the back neckline. Do you see what I did? So just blend yours in like that. So now I'm going to cut along my new lines. So I'm just cancelling that to show you that we don't need that back neckline anymore. So next thing I'm just cutting all around. So I'm just indicating that this is my back. I'm going to be cutting 2 pieces of that too. So the next I want to do is cut facing for my back neck. So just like I did in the front, I placed it on the blank paper and I'm going to trace around the neckline. Trace a bit towards the center back. Trace the shoulder line. So I'm just tracing it all and that's it. So now that you have that your neck traced out, I'm going to make it more visible with a marker so you can see what I just traced. This is literally my back outline that I just traced. So now I'm going to mark my allowance. First of all, I'm going to be marking 1 inch in, just like I did to the front. Remember the front had 1 inch. So I'm going to be marking 1 inch too. 1 inch on the shoulder. So just mark yours the way I'm marking. I don't know how to explain cutting a facing. That's what I'm just saying. So when you look and I'm saying 1 inch, you know what part. So now for the center back, I'm going to be taking another 1 inch for my to close up there, because I have a seam at the back. So that 1 inch is going to be the allowance that I'm going to be using to close up the seam at the back. So just see, I'm just using a straight line to connect it. So now for the neck parts, I need my sewing allowance, which is going to be 1/2 inch. So I'm going to be marking 1/2 inch on the shoulder. 1/2 inch on the shoulder. Just, you see what I'm doing? That's where my shoulder ends. So I'm just connecting that. I'm also going to mark 1/2 inch at the neckline. So this is me just marking 1/2 inch, 1/2 inch, half, and I'm going to blend that to meet the shoulder line. So that's just what I'm doing there. So this is my back facing. So when you're cutting your back and that's your front facing, you don't need any more allowance. You just place it on your paper and cut 2 pieces of it. So fold your paper into 2 and just place it on it and cut. It doesn't have a fold. Both of them do not have fold. So that's what I'm doing. What I was doing by showing you 1/2 inch, 1 inch, I was putting my allowances. So this paper, I'm just going to put it on my fabric and just cut without measuring any allowance all around, because I already included the allowances. So this is my back facing. So I'm just indicating back and I'm going to cut 2 pieces of this. So for the bottom part of the front, the first thing I did was make a cut on that line all the way to the end. I drew a straight line from the dart all the way to the end, and I made a cut up to where the dart stopped. So now I'm going to straighten my dart legs. Do you see? From the edge of the dart to the beginning of the top of the dart, I'm just drawing a straight line, connecting those 2 points together. So that's going to be, it's going to give me a straight line on the dart. Now I'm going to cut on one of that line so that I can close up my dart. Do you understand? So I can close up my dart. So I'm going to hold this down with a tape. So as I'm closing up my dart, it's opening up the down of the dress, of the pattern rather. After joining the dart, the top of the pattern is going to be irregular. So you're just going to put a paper in underneath that and just complete that with a curve. After completing that, I'm just going to blend it in with a marker. So now I can cut that out because I've completed that line. And then I'm just going to cut it out. So now that I'm done closing up the darts, I'm going to open up my paper all the way to the edge of the darts, just so that my paper can open. Do you see? Do you see what I've done? So you're just going to open your own. Please don't separate the paper. Just get as close to the top as possible. So after cutting, I'm going to keep this aside. I'm going to replicate this. Everything I just did here, I'm going to do the same thing to the back. So this is my back, and I'm just trying to give a quick run through that I just did the same thing I did to my front to my back. So guys, after I did that, I was trying to show you guys in this part how I place it on my fabric to cut it. But the camera wasn't picking the entire thing. I kept trying. So this is me at this point trying to arrange it. But you can see the end of the fabric is not showing because the dress, the end is really long. I was trying to get 40-something inches, but the camera wasn't picking. So I kept pulling and pulling. And I really wanted to explain this part. So I just decided, you can see now, it was a struggle. I was sliding up, sliding down. You could see some part, you couldn't see some part. So I just decided I was going to just show you to do it on. I was just going to explain it on a smaller scale. So this is a visual representation of the back and the front on a smaller scale. So you remember up to the part where we closed up the dart. So I'm not going to fast forward up to that point. So now I'm done doing that. I've closed up the dart and I've opened it up. So you can see this is just a small representation of what you see. I'm cutting now all the way to the top, making sure that it's not separated. It's just dangling, just like I did in the big one. So guys, this is just a smaller representation, but you understand what I'm trying to do. So the white paper is going to be presenting my fabric, and then the brown paper is the pattern paper. So now you're just going to place your pattern paper on your fabric. Please guys, this is the front part we're cutting now. So fold your fabric. Your fabric will not be on fold because the front part has a zip in the front. So when you're placing it down, make sure you leave a space in front, at least 1 inch wide at the front of the center front rather, for your zip allowance. So when you're done doing that, you see that space between your hip line, that space on your hip line rather, you're going to make sure that space is just exactly 2 inches wide. So after making the space in between the hip is exactly 2 inches, now you can pin your fabric down. So after pinning, you place your ruler from your hip line and just rule that line all the way out. Please make sure you have enough space on your fabric. Make sure you're using the fabric that is at least 1.5 inch wide. So after doing that, you're going to get the length of your dress now. So because you've already removed the top part of your dress, you're going to minus your shoulder to your waist away from your full length. So now placing the tape at the waist, you're going to mark down remaining measurements as your remaining length. So that's what I'm doing. I'm just ruling that straight line. So I'm going to start from my waist. That measurement, I've minused my shoulder to my waist measurement for my full length, and now I'm marking that. Do you see? I'm using that waistline as my border line or as my starting point, and I'm marking that measurement all the way. So it's going to give me a curve. It's not going to be a straight line because I'm using the same measurement all the way. Do you see? So I'll just connect all that lines. So that's how you do yours. Minus your shoulder to your waist measurement from your full length, and then using your waist as the start line, you mark that measurement. So I'm just ruling that. Just ruling the front line. So guys, this is how you place it on your fabric. I'm trying to show you the white is the fabric. This is how you place it on your fabric. So now you can mark out your allowance at the hem. Now for the zip allowance, because I have 1 inch zip allowance at the top, I'm also going to be using 1 inch allowance for this bottom part. So I'm just marking up my allowance. That's what I'm doing there. That's my 1 inch allowance. And I'll just connect all that line. Using my marker to show you. Please, on your fabric, don't use a marker. You use a tailor's chalk. I'm just trying to show you. This is what I would do on my fabric. Exactly what I'm doing here. So next thing, I'm going to measure 1/2 inch allowance at my waistline. I'm going to call it that part my waistline, but you know it's going to be joining to your under bust line. So 1/2 inch, because I'm also going to be using 1/2 inch on my on that one. Now for my side, I'm going to be using 3/4 inches to 1 inch allowance. So whatever yours is, this is me just showing you that there should be an allowance on this side. And also at the hem, I'm going to be using 1/2 inch just to fold in my allowance. So guys, at this waist part, you're going to use your curve ruler to just curve that. Don't make that a straight line. At the waist, just make that a curved line. So I'm also going to make put an allowance at the hem, and I'm just going to cut that out. Please guys, I forgot to show you that I'm putting an allowance here, but on your fabric, please put an allowance at the hem. So I'm just cutting this out. So this is exactly what I would do on my fabric. So I don't have to start attaching extra paper. This is what I would do. This is what I'm trying to show you on a small scale. It was what I was trying to do there. I kept spreading and opening, and the camera was not just... I didn't know what angle to put it to be able to record. So this is what I would do. So by the time you're done, this is what it should look like. Guys, remember this should be cut into 2 pieces. So you should have 2 pieces of this. So 2 pieces, your fabric should be folded into 2 and then place 2 pieces of this. So I'm going to do this same exact thing for the back. Exactly what I just did here is what I would do at the back. Guys, please use the back pattern for the back, because you know the back has a curve at the waist to take in the excess at the waist. So please use your back pattern to do this for your back, and use your front pattern to do this for your front. So I'm just showing you when I put my zipper, this is what it's going to look like. So the back's also going to look exactly like this, because the back has a seam at the center too. But please use the back pattern for the back. Remember, we have a curve at the waist of the back, so please use the back for the back. So everything I just showed you in the front here is what you will do for your back. And with that, the pattern is ready. And we're done with the pattern. Don't forget to turn on your notification for part 2. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys on the next one.